Hi everybody, it's Laura at Hyperstamper. I am back with another one of my antique vintage junk journals that I just finished the cover on. So this is a real beauty, and it's an antique book, but the cover was just plain with nothing on it. So I covered it up with about 8 different pieces of antique and vintage crochet, linen, lace, tatting. It's just exquisite. There's even some Chantilly lace here, vintage. I absolutely love how it turned out, and I've got my vintage beads here. Now, just to point out, there's a few beads here, such as this white one. It's translucent, and it came from another set of these beads here that are antique, and they are, it says here, made in occupied Japan. So that was a very specific period in history during the war, and I just thought that was really cool. So I wanted to give the history of that piece of the bangle. And then this up here is a vintage earring with one of these torture clamps that would have pinched your earlobe to stay on, and I took that off, and I just made I took a white paper clip and rolled it to make the bangle hook. So let me show you the inside of this beautiful journal that I'm about to put in my Etsy shop, hyperstamper.etsy.com. And again, every single piece in here, and this is, there are so many inserts in here, there's probably too many because I don't put this many in most of my journals. And just as another side note, it is December 4th today, and I am able to get shipments out way before Christmas if you order in the next, say, 10 days. So now let me take you on a little journey here. So we've got the original first pages of the book here, which is so cool. As always, I try to keep the original first plates in. And we've got the publication date here, which is 1938. So very cool. Another wonderful plate here, original. And then I've got a pocket here that I've put in this little secondary pocket and journaling spot from a 1922 page. And this is an original book plate, never used, but antique indeed. Little pocket here made of vintage linen, children's book page, vintage. There's just some lace I put into a vintage file folder tag. Children's book, vintage. I love this creative writing piece that I got from an antique book. And this is just a really cool antique piece put on top of a vintage dictionary page for extra journaling space. Flower made out of antique paper. And this here is a great journaling spot, and this comes from another one of my dust covers. I have a few of Tony's scrapbooks from the 1930s. This was actually also a radio program. Very well known. I love this graphic. Like, how cool is that? Inkwell and plume pen. Just love it. More journaling space here. Or you could glue the bottom here and make it a tuck spot. I'm leaving that up to the new owner of this journal. Fun clusters here. Another pocket here from the children's vintage book, and some vintage Monopoly money. This is a from a typing instruction book from a vintage high school book. And this is another wonderful plate from the early 1900s, probably around 1905. And we've got some journaling space up here and up here as well. And Poems You Ought to Know, and that is from the early 1900s, that piece. More vintage crochet down here. A 1950s doily making sheet. And there's that beautiful tatting that we get here. A lost art, certainly, but I get very excited when I find some. This is just a fun vintage page here that you can journal on the back of. And this here is a great photo. Look at this child. And what I think is a horse and not a donkey. Pretty sure that's a horse or a pony. The vintage children's book page here and here. And then this tag here is made from an antique music sheet, and it's got 2 little mini tags in it. Isn't that neat? So that's kind of fun. Little hidden journaling spot under this vintage fabric. And more children's book pages. And then this here is just a really sweet old French piece, as you can see, and you can journal on the back of that. Very old. I just love everything French. And here is another 1895 piece there. I turned into a journaling tag. Another antique book page, pocket here. A vintage crochet. And this is a phone bill from 1958. Very cool. And this is just a war memorial and a beautiful bridge, a vintage souvenir card. And that would have been from the 1930s as well. And that is a theater arts page, magazine page from 1940. And just another little journaling tag here from an antique book page. Another vintage children's pocket. Stories short and long. Another fun cluster up here. And made this pocket out of a 1904 book, Freckles. And then that is a vintage book page on antique furniture. So that's kind of cool. This is vintage here. That is the spine of this book that I used as decoration. This is a beautiful piece here. You'll see that on the other side. And a 1950s Better Homes and Garden tab piece from a recipe book. And this one's on cakes and frostings. So here's that Sunday reading for the young. Just an absolutely beautiful illustration there on both sides. And that's from 1896. 100-year-old banknote there. USA. And then this here is a hand-typed research paper. And that is antique as well. And then another vintage piece here, How to Dance. And this one is the jitterbug. What is that? Love it. My dad and I used to do the jitterbug. I loved it. Another plate here from 1904. And then this is a very special piece here from 1895. And popular toys and specialties for young people. Look at this. How wonderful is that? And on the other side, you've got this great steam engine. It's all brass pieces. Just really historically wonderful. Telling about how things were made and gifted back in the 1800s. Another vintage children's book page here. Another pocket here out of this wonderful vintage embroidered piece. And you can see the blue markings there is an iron-on pattern that I've been actually giving away in my journals, probably from about the 40s. And this is a great Mother Goose vintage page here from the 40s as well, with antique paper on the back. And let's keep going. This is a vintage sewing instruction book page from the 50s. It's an antique book page. There's some fun little clusters here, and I love this. You can journal on the back of this little women's page, and that's a vintage book page. And then this here, that is vintage as well. Just what's left over of the hooks and eye loops there. Kind of fun. You can have fun collaging with that. 1955 stamp collector's book page. And this is so sweet. Look at this little girl and her teddy bear, and that is from the 1920s. Absolutely adorable. I didn't do anything to that because I just love it the way it is. We've got the 3 pigs on the back of that though. And a vintage playing card. Just really fun to upcycle these. Lots of ideas you can get on Pinterest. 1920s book page. Love it. Another piece of beautiful crochet doily. And that brings us to the cool back of this page. It became part of, this particular card was printed in the 50s, and they started doing checkouts there, but it's actually a much older book than that. So I hope you love it as much as I loved making it. Come back soon, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you soon.